Welcome to the MMHP and the 989. Channeling all styles and eras of Michigan music history from the city by the bay. And now, here's your host, Scott Baker.
We'd like to welcome you all back to the MMHP and the 989, here for part 2 with John Cohassey, the author from the Detroit area, who got to share many stories of his wonderful books, as well as especially the Toast of the Town, the one we're really diving into on the life and times of Sunnie Wilson. If you haven't heard part 1, please go back and check that out, as part 2 will tie it all together and lead into the future of what John has planned. He is one of our most revered historical authors, particularly in the Michigan music realm, but also pretty prominent in the Hemingway and Detroit Jack Kerouac times as well. A little internet searching will give you a lot of great detail on John. And also, please log on to his 7 Arts Books page, and you can find a copy of all his books there. And enjoy part 2, John Cohassey.
Yeah, I like all this stuff because I like to study Detroit all the way from its founding. And I read a lot about early Detroit and, you know, the surrender of Detroit and Hull's. I like it all. I mean, now I just fit it all together, you know. And I like the region, so this is where I live. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I like to read about Detroit all the way up to certain years. And I'm helping a black political consultant put his memoir together right now. He won't mind if I tell him it's from Coleman to Kwame. So you figure out what I put in that. Yeah, because he worked for Coleman. So there's a different era there, but a tough one. But that's what I'm saying is I knew him. He introduced me to Sunnie, this gentleman. So now he's putting it together, and people will hear about it when he gets off his butt and actually gets it into the hands of the publisher, and just kept saying, I want to do this and that with it. So I helped him put it together book-wise. But I write all the time. I like it.
You hit on Kerouac too, but you did a book on Hemingway.
Yeah.
What took you up there? Sasky way, up that way?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'm on the board of the Michigan Hemingway Society.
Oh yeah.
Kind of function as helping them with research and stuff. Yeah, and my friend is the president. He lives right in downtown Petoskey, and I always liked. So I walked. One time I went up there and I'm going to do an article, about it and try to do it the best I can, because a lot of this stuff wasn't really one solid article. It was good. So I met him and he knew a lot. He lives right there, and then he got me involved in learning it all. He knows where the wind blew that day up there, So, but it's just part of the region, and I always like reading him. So, and it's Michigan, so it's just another part of the history. Detroit-wise, I wrote a big essay that a federal judge vetted. It was banned in Detroit because Hemingway's To Have and Have Nots, 1937, now was banned in Detroit in 1938. So there was another big legal thing that no one knew, and even the judge didn't know. And he went, wow, I grew up as a little kid. So that was a big to-do in the papers, and it went nationwide for free speech. And all these writers came to these little bookstore owners that were trying to sell, still defend the book, and the Detroit Public Library banned it.
Oh yeah.
But you could go in the back room and read it.
Yeah. What was the reasoning for the banning?
One is he finally got the complete F word in it.
Oh.
Another one was it had like dirty scenes. It implied that there was some incest in it. Well, so a woman had checked it out, and she thought it was a travel book, but we shouldn't laugh at her because Green Hills of Africa was kind of a travel book. So she probably presumed it'd be something about Hemingway hunting, or when she went home and read it, she gave it to all these muckety-mucks and said,
oh, jeez.
And it was funny because the county prosecutor actually got up to him and he showed it to some of the judges, and the prosecutor was that powerful back then, and he made sure that it was banned. But you could technically go back in the back room and read it.
And this is readily available now?
For adults. Oh, yeah. The judge never got killed in the courts where it got started getting stalled, because it started to, bog down with the judge says, I'm not an arbiter of taste. They were, and it's a long story, but they sent for the same defense lawyer that helped defend James Joyce of Ulysses, which the band was lifted in 1933 by Judge Woolsey. So Ulysses by James Joyce was banned until 1933. So, and they used the same, and I found all the records. And they sent them to Detroit to the ACLU, and they were and this dragged on and on. But what the point is about the papers, it was great because the people in the editorials, that was the best thing because people were writing and they're very intelligent, and a lot of the editorials were like, we can't let this book be banned. I didn't like the book. I don't even, the book wasn't a very good book. I'm telling you, it was one of Hemingway's really, really weak books. But they said, we can't let this book be banned here because right now in Soviet Union, they might put you in the gulag, and in Nazi Germany, you might just go away for good. Mm-hmm. So there were people in free speech defense who were more for it. Women, men, whatever. Mm-hmm. And so it's a long story, but I wrote that. See, and these are my private projects because where do you publish something that's 40 or 50 pages? It's not a book. Metro Times wasn't interested.
No, too big.
Too big. And I don't even know if they were. I mean, but, so this is the stuff that I still continue culture-wise, I mean.
Did you see that PBS thing over the summer on Hemingway? I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, I mean.
It didn't really tickle, though.
No, it's all right.
Yeah.
It's all right. The thing, I didn't learn anything, but, I mean. No, my point is, like, there were some weaknesses in it. And the thing is, when we've been working on it for so long, and I knew people that were in it. I know a couple of people that were interviewed. It's all right. I mean, I'm glad they did it because you need people to get out there and young people to see this stuff. Yeah. I don't need to nitpick over it.
It's got to get back in the discussion.
It's got to get back in the discussion. You don't want him to be banned or anybody else, or banned or just fading out. But but it's all like that stuff. And then I write my own stuff, and that's the stuff that you do after you've learned all this, and then you are ready to do other things. But
is that the radio tower now?
Yeah, stuff like that. And I do it because that's what I love, but I think there wasn't a training ground for culture much. The thing is, I did a couple things for Metro Times. They were just cover stuff. I never wrote for the magazine except for a couple I pitched. Gale Research are just biographies. If you wrote for the paper, you had to die. I wrote about the Bluebird for the Detroit News, and I got the insert. They weren't interested in any steady cultural stuff. No. I mean, so I was nowhere to write about books that you like, were Hemingway, Michigan, very much. So I just went on my own and said, forget it, and I'm on my path of self-study. And, so a lot of stuff that I did, you couldn't pitch it anywhere, but it didn't stop me from doing it. But as I read thousands of pages, literally, and then Russians, everything else, and I read everything Hemingway read in the Russians in translation.
Huh.
Yeah, I did, because I'm writing about what did he read in Paris, right? And I'm reading the same translations he did. Well, that might be madness, but I love it.
You're getting to visualize it, how it was going into the brain.
And I'm lucky that I have time to do it, because the thing is, it's like it's a disease that should be encouraged, I guess. Reading. Yeah.
Well, I think for you, and this is great, and I'm grasping it right now. You've dug so deep into such unique things that when other stuff comes out, it's kind of more like icing on the cake all the time. It's always like, I've already done there. Already been there, done that. It's nice to see again, but here's the real thing.
Not with Fred, though. So that's what I'm saying, is we should get him on it, because when I meet somebody like him, or like Steve Nardella, or people like that were there, and Steve, like, I played with Lightning Slim, I mean, I have his record, and I know he's buried in the cemetery in my town, but I don't know him, and that's what I'm saying, is when I meet Fred or go to Steve's, and that's how I met Fred, at Steve's. Wow. And you go to Steve's, it's like, wow, he puts on these 78s and records, and he'll look at you and he'll say, who do you think this is? And I only got it once, and when I did, he went, wow. I mean, one time I went, whoa, who is this? And it was Little Richard singing some almost gospel-like blues thing, real deep, man. It was like, wow, I would never have guessed. I mean, stuff like, he comes up with these records that are like,
Well, when did you get back into playing guitar?
I just play for my own coffee hour when I wake up.
Yeah, but you made some. I think I have a. Wasn't there an Artie Wolf
Oh yeah,
CD or?
yeah, I did that. Yeah, I don't know if I. You know, it's one of those things. You went and they cleaned it all up, and that's not the way we sounded rougher live. And you're like going like, I wish it could have been different. You know, and I did I was studying that. I went from blues and I tried to play rockabilly, and it was just I played like 6 hours a day just to like learn all that. And I was in a 3-piece, which was just incredibly hard to do. And then, you know, so it was like, I learned that stuff, but I learned it like culturally too. And I learned the patterns, and I know I can handle like talking about it, because at least we played it and I studied it, and I met other guys that were doing it, and we shared it, you know. Yeah. But me, I don't want to play in a bar anymore. I'm done all that. That was years ago. I'll walk in and maybe sit in if you beg me. But I feel so, you know, it's you can't. I miss it in a certain sense, but not when I write about culture. I don't feel that I did the wrong thing. I mean, it's just you can't do both. And think I'm a lot better writer than I am player. I got all right, and I got good. And it's like playing baseball. You know, you're on AA, you ain't gonna go any farther.
But still damn good.
Well, I don't know. Maybe I'm low A. But I enjoyed it. You know, another thing too is like, I'm at the end of life. I'm putting all these pieces and parts together called my musical back pages, and that's why I was going to go talk to Steve and interview him, because he's talking about like on the phone about how I followed James Cotton around after he left Muddy in New York, and I followed him there, and I go, can I take that down, tell the story? I'll put it in it's not only stuff that people I met, but the stories I was told that I think should stay in there. Yeah. If Steve doesn't take it down and doesn't come up here and tell the story, no one's gonna know it. Like, cause who followed? Exactly. You know.
Exactly.
Yeah, he was in Greenwich Village,
right?
Oh in 64, really? 65, 66, the prime.
So the folk period.
Yeah. And then
he went to see everybody.
Everybody. So that's what I'm saying is like, and then me, I knew a lot of people that played, and he's known a million people, but as a writer, it was like I warmed up for Clifton Chenier a couple of times, but I spent lots of time with them at the hotel where they stayed with us. So we're just sitting around talking about Baton Rouge, and they're showing up, and you know, they're swatting flies on the with their hands on the picnic tables, and they're all going boom. And then Clifton says, "You're cupping your hand and blowing the fly out. You got to put your fingers like this, bam," and he killed a fly. And that's what they're all sitting around board with for sound check, you know. It's just hilarious.
Oh my gosh!
And they're all real nice people, you know. And you come down Baton Rouge, you know. So I mean, I met all these people, but as a writer, it's like I like hanging out with them, and the stories are good. You know what I mean? So like when Dwight Yoakam came to the Hoedown after Guitars and Cadillacs just came out. My friend grew up with Pete Anderson. Here we are on the stage with them all back. They're just all there talking about how Pete's telling me how the band was formed in L.A.
Oh my gosh!
You know how they went and bought the outfits at the cowboy store, and so what I'm saying is I've got, you know, country stuff and this and then the blues is like, and then I got to play with Otis Rush once, so that was fun hanging out with him. Like he knows people and but a lot of it was just the character of it, you know, and meeting people and hanging out like Ben Sheppard from Soundgarden and Dwight Yoakam, and there's like all these different people, and I don't know, it's just that's what I'm saying. And then the stories that I always heard that were legendary, and these guys probably have just as good, but I was always told about this concert. I was there, I was backstage, and around me, Bob Seger lived at the farm down the street, and I saw the farmhouse, and I saw the hippie girls, but I didn't know he lived there when I was a little kid. But now I know that was his farmhouse. You know what I mean? Over here was the you know, this place, and they rehearsed. I mean, there's all sorts of people, and I'm just saying. So as a writer, I just put all this stuff, and then the stuff about the chessmate. You know, my friend was talking about the chessmate. You want to hear a good chessmate? Well, shouldn't give it away. There's some really good chessmate ones that, you know, when Howlin' Wolf was playing there and all that. I mean, they were told to me, and I remember them quite well. So I just want to put something about the chessmate. And I was going to talk about Neil Young coming to the chessmate all the way from Canada and didn't make the audition.
Right.
I wish you could
when
remember.
Joni was there, right? Yep. So
You know, it'd be fantastic, and you may have done this already, but no, we've
Now,
had
isn't that where Neil got? There's a story he tells on his Canterbury House recording about them playing. Maybe it wasn't the Chessmate, a different club in Detroit, where the car got stripped while they were playing and they were stranded, and that's when he wrote a song in a diner.
The White Castle.
The White Cat, yeah.
Now, which one was it? Because I was trying to think earlier.
He wrote.
It's an early one.
Old Laughing Lady.
Old Laughing Lady. Yeah,
Old
wasn't that on the
Laughing
first one?
it's on the very first Neil Young album.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. I
Yeah.
knew it was on the first one. I couldn't.
Yeah.
That's right.
And was he at the Chessmate or?
He tried out. He admits that in a couple memoirs. The last memoir, somebody loaned it to me. He said that he had tried out but didn't make it. The audition. Yeah. But hung out with them.
See, that's to me, and this is what I was going to ask you is, you may have already touched on some of these with some essays or something, but nobody's really written about the folk scene, like the Joni time, that time, the Gordon Lightfoot coming through time, all the Ann Arbor coming over there and back and forth. I mean, we've had a lot of podcasts that have really hit on it from different angles, and I'm like, there's really nobody that's done anything.
Yeah, that's another one.
Deep history, no.
I don't know.
Isn't Raven still going? I think that's what it's called.
I don't know.
That's by Detroit.
Okay.
That was a kind of a big name
That was
coffee
a big one.
house.
I mean, I don't know if I was going to put that together. I was just trying to get the stories told to me, or the ones that I read in all those memoirs and pulled it together. You know, this is the same place. It's there today. The building from the Chessmate. It's a laundromat.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So that's the thing. You know what I mean? Most of the buildings aren't even there. That's what I'm saying. Is like I grew up mystified by all this stuff. You know what I mean? When I first heard blues, what are blues?
Yeah.
You know, I remember like the hippie girls were like, yeah, we went to Como last night and so, and Johnny Winter was playing. Ooh, that's an interesting Johnny Winter. I'm listening in the kitchen, looking at these teenage, girls or high school, and I'm just a real little, but my ears were open in 4th grade already, and I'm looking at the girls. Well, he played blues, but what do you do to blues after a while? You know, you just kind of, I'm like, blues, Johnny Winter. It's coming. The name's in there, and that's what I'm saying is, so all this stuff has been in my memory, you know what I mean, as a little kid, but I missed live stuff because I was already couldn't go to these shows. I watched the kids, the guys come home from Cobo Hall all half smoked out, and I wanted to be there. I wanted to see Jimi Hendrix at Cobo Hall, but I couldn't go. So to me, it's like there's a hunger for it to learn about it too.
Yeah, and it to get you like the dirty and the raw edges too, because you don't really talk about Motown a whole lot. That works was a little more polished.
I like it a lot. I don't mean that personally, but I just because I had played blues and I learned blues. I listened to Motown all my life and really love it. I did meet some of the guys. I mean, Sunnie Wilson was real good friends with Teddy Harris, and I wrote a little piece on Teddy Harris and Beans Bowls, and Teddy played where they used to when someone would die, the Motown guys would show up at the cemetery and play like almost New Orleans send-off music, and Beans would play a horn, and Teddy played the clarinet.
Okay.
So it was sad at Sonny's. All there was Beans Bowls and Teddy, and he says we're the only two left. So Sonny's funeral, it was down to those. We used to have 6 or 8 or 10 guys play these funerals, and we're down to 2. So I met them, and they were very nice, and so I mean, it's just where you ended up. The Motown people, there weren't around, except for the side guys. There weren't a lot of whole people around here to meet that I knew, or I would have been there. I
didn't come into your conversation.
Well, it did. I mean, Sonny knew Maxine Powell, so I wrote an article about her for Contemporary Black Biography. The one that was in the grooming department. And she was very angry when I went to her apartment on the waterfront in Detroit, and she wasn't very friendly. All she complained about is that she got ripped off basically like everybody else. But I kept saying to her, well, Miss Powell, she was Miss Powell. I said, at least you got to meet all these people, and it was probably pretty exciting. She goes, I know, but I didn't get the money.
Oh.
She was very mad. She was very mad. And then she wouldn't tell me she gave me a hint at her birth and her year date. She goes, well, I was born on this, and you figure it out. So I took it down later. I just put it in the articles. That's all I had, because there was a biography, and I didn't have the birth or the year or the day. And so I later on, I don't know if I got it right, I just found her brochure the other day in the drawer with all this other stuff. And that was fun. That's what I'm saying, is it's like it was, and she showed me all these beautiful photos of her and Marvin Gaye and all, everybody, you know, are in cars, and she's showing them how to get out of the car, the girls to get out of the car with their dress on.
Oh.
That's what she would do. So she said, right here, what I'm doing, I'm showing whoever it was, Martha or whoever, how to exit the car with their dress and how to do that, you know. And she was cool, but she was very, very, she wasn't pleasant. She felt used in her life, and she was not fun to interview. Probably one of the most, you know, person had that. But I thank you, and I moved on, and I wrote the thing as best as I could, and I touched on those people, but they weren't easy to reach. Sunnie would introduce me to them, and he'd be out, and he goes like, he played on Motown, blah blah blah, you know, and it would be a side guys, you know. But no, I like it all. That's my problem, you know. I mean, I'm better, like Fred would know, in your concentration of what you studied, you're going to know some music better than others. I read books on the Motown. I didn't think some of them were all that good. I think there should be a really good book on Motown, right?
Well, you have that book there before Motown.
But that's
a great book.
But that's not, you know what I mean? It now, it could be 2 volumes. You know, somebody needs to do a really good job, you know, and not just the memoirs, you know, that you pick out, you know, from there. I stood in line. Sunnie said, Barry Gordy's coming to town, John. Go in line, get the book, and go tell him that I want to see him. Well, I get in line and I buy the book, his memoir. It was in Detroit, and I forget where it was. And I stood there forever. And I didn't know that you didn't even look up. All he did was go like this.
Oh, geez, he didn't even look up.
No, didn't look up. And I said, Sunnie Wilson said hello. We're taking.
Oh.
and I stood there for hours, and I'm like, oh, God, this was. What do you say? I go, well, Mr. Wilson, he didn't say anything. I call him Mr. Wilson. I never called him Sunnie. I said, he didn't say much. He was in a hurry. Well, okay, then.
Wow.
So that, you know.
Yeah, that's the extent of some of it.
Right.
Did you ever get to talk to Aretha?
No. She called Sunnie, and when she was doing the first book, she wrote one so far, right? She wanted to do another one. So here we are. We come home. It's Friday, and the answering machine says, Mr. Wilson, this is Aretha Franklin's secretary. She would like you to call. She's working on another book, and she would like you to call her. I'll imitate Sunnie. Well, I said about all I can say about her father. Well, I don't know. No, I don't think I'll have to call her back. No. And some of the stuff they had to say privately did not make my book. And I'm not saying what it is. He'd say, turn that off, you know. And I kept to that, because like Sunnie would have stories about CL that were private, you know, and it's not going anywhere. And I have the tapes, and the family wanted them. I said, I never got, those are my tapes. I said, I got to go through them, because he told me not to say something here. He didn't want to name the Purple Gang by their names. He didn't want to call the Down of Detroit by his name. He did not want to tell stories about this and that. In fact, he got mad when Joe Lewis's son came to town with a really bad book he wrote about his dad. Sunnie was in the book, interviewed, but it was short. And he goes, you know why it's short? I said, no. At one point in the interview, his son wanted to know all about the women. And I got mad and said, all the stuff that Joe Louis, your dad, did in his lifetime to bring people together, and you just want to talk about his women? He goes, he wasn't married half the time when I was with him. He could do what he wanted to do. He's going, interview done. And he walked out.
Right.
But he had enough in there that made the book. And he finished the story with me in the book about going to, he and Joe left the Chicken Shack one time in a brand new car, I think Ford or Mercury provided. And they drove off and left and didn't tell anybody. They were following the women's stage shows all around to the next place and buying new clothes, and they were missing. They just took off on the road, you know. But his son didn't get the story. They finally caught up with him because FDR, he was supposed to be in Washington for the March of Dimes for a big to-do for Joe was, and they finally, some agents found him in, I don't know, Cincinnati or somewhere, and he says, "You're supposed to be in Washington." And Sonny, "Well, it was good to be with Joe." Smiling. "Well, what are you? You're with the world heavyweight champion. You're a little cuter little guy. You're like the little, companion. It's good to be the king for a while." But so this is the kind of stuff that, it made the book, but other times Sonny would say, and I could have done it, but Wayne published it, so you're not going to get too far out there. You're not going to get too bawdy, because they would have probably said no. Yeah. So everything he said was true, but it was like, there's the front, and look, right back here is more to it. When I tell people, especially the guys that come here, I want to know about, these guys were numbers. Sonny didn't run numbers, but Joe Lewis's, managed numbers men. They went to prison, later on for it. I said, these are all night people, and they were all like, they had mistresses, and they had this, and they were running numbers, and they were like, in their clubs were, you don't leave letters, memoirs, or whatever in recordings about this. This is the night people. So I said, they don't have any tangible evidence, about how they lived, what I mean? Unless you had, some criminal wanted to write his memoir, I don't know. There was a movie about that the other night. What's the one? There was a movie about a gangster wanted a young guy to write his memoir, later in his life. In fact, I can't think right now. But anyway, that's what I'm saying is the paper trail to that. And Sonny would just say, what Sonny would do is, because he knew where to go when anybody came to town, not necessarily his place. He's got a vault in the back of the old amusement park kind of place, was a big like bank vault place, and that's where they went and had their drinks. In the books, there's a picture of Earl Hines sitting in the back. Or they took the hotel, they went to the top, and it was private, and top of the mark is what Ellington Duke called it. And they would privately drink together. But then Sonny knew where to go. Well, when Charlie Parker came to town, he said, I didn't talk to him much. He just wanted to know where to go. And after he's done playing, Sonny knew the after hours route. So he knew who had the cutest, the best looking women, who had the best after hours bar.
He took Bird, gave Bird the after hours treatment.
Yep. And so when they came, they knew Sonny would be that's why it's Toast to the Town, he was the guy that would take you around. He was a nighttime guy. That's why I said he didn't even get up till like 11 or 12 o'clock when I knew him. He said, well, I didn't go to bed till 4 or 5 o'clock, even in the old days, as an old guy. He still stayed up late because he said, I never got the clock.
That internal clock was
set. So he gave you a little entrance into the night world, you know what I mean? And he knew who the ladies, the sex workers were. He knew, So I'm saying is that he knew who the gangsters were. So that was great, and it was like a lot of fun. And I like the story in the book real quick when they went to Cuba and he went with Joe, and they went down to negotiate a deal for Joe to have a gambling nightclub in Havana, and they went with Batista. But in '59 came, and thank God he didn't invest in that one. But a black guy down there with Boxer could have done it. It pissed him off that he couldn't do it in Las Vegas. He had to do it off the off-beaten track. He had to go into the black section of Vegas. And Sonny said, I don't even want to negotiate that because you don't deserve that. You know what I mean? But in Havana, it might have happened because he, they love Batista like boxing. I know he's a scoundrel, Batista, but they were negotiating, and George Raft was involved. And I thought, no, that's right. I want a great movie, man. You got George Raft, and this is the stuff that when I was sitting there taping it, I'm like going, I love film noir movies. I love gangster movies, and I'm like, this is so cool. But that was it. There wasn't any dialogue said. There wasn't any. That was it. It's in the book, but it was.
I have an autographed picture from Batista. I'll tell you the story later.
Wow. Yeah. So anyway, these are the kind of scenes that and then everybody they would add in it be like, Jackie Gleason picture. I love Jack. This is great. Now I get to read about Jackie Gleason. Everybody I like Joe Lewis, Jackie Gleason. It was like there wasn't anybody.
Another chapter.
Yeah, I mean it was like, and then he did Idlewild because he, and I had to go up to Idlewild and the chapter there and read as much as I could about that. And
did he have any pictures of Idlewild?
A few. He had a golden one. It's not in. It's in the book.
I have over 100.
Well, yeah.
They were given to me by one of the Fiesta dolls.
Yeah.
Who was Arthur Bragg's.
Right. He had those promotional pictures. That's all he had.
Oh, I have.
Yeah.
Well, it's in my first and second book. One picture of her and Cassius Clay.
Yeah.
When he came up there.
The golden picture he had was rare. Is that he came out with it and he says, have you ever seen a picture of Joe Louis without a suit on? No. He says, we didn't allow it. But look at this one. Joe's got like chino pants and a short sleeve t-shirt, and he's pointing, and he has like a fisherman hat, and he's out at Lake Idlewild with Sunnie, and that was rare because he said he always had to be dressed, and you're not going in there.
Not until, yeah.
No, he couldn't. They guarded him. Oh wow. You know, he would wander off and try to go to some bar they didn't have control over. You're not going in there. But he said he had that rare picture. Problem with Sunnie is people stole a lot of his stuff out of his apartment, and then one guy borrowed a bunch of them, and the car leaked in the back window and ruined them all. That's why he was freaked about it. But I went up there and I walked around. And I got ads, and Fred's got more than he ever had. But Sunnie had the little Idlewild publications they put out, Detroit chapter. So yeah,
Detroit chapter.
Those are cool. And he's on front of the one in the book with toasting, you know. And he was head of the Detroit chapter up there. So,
he might be in some of the pictures I have that
cool.
I can't figure out. She lives in Dallas now.
Wow.
The woman who gave it to me, and because a lot of them I'm not sure who they are.
Hey, I mean, I could help. He would know you wonderfully. He would have probably known everybody. But did you, when you went up there, did they let you in the Flamingo? I don't know what the Flamingo was still open. It was the newer one because the Paradise.
Oh no, I booked Winston Walls though at Red Rooster.
Yeah, that was
up there.
Yeah, when I went up there, the Flamingo was the time that they had the Motown groups and Idlewild Review, because the Paradise had burned down, and so there was just a field there. But I was in there, and there was still the mural it was like a cinder block wall, and they had painted it, and that was in the early 90s. So I don't know where that went now, but they let me in, the inspector of.
I think the building, is that right across from the lake?
I think so, but it's been.
It's still there. Well, it was Mike Beatty and we went by there last year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what shape it was in, because if the roof was bad or something, and the wall could have got, ruined or something because of the heat and the cold. But yeah, so I went up there and walked around and did whatever I could with that. And he told his stories about his time up there. And it is a memoir, so I'd add in enough, and I'd always make sure the dates were right. And I'd look up to make sure that this little hotel was there and where it was and over here. And I had fun, but every time he said something, it made like, I got an Idlewild chapter, so I had to start on that. And I wrote all the little prefaces for it to back it up when it was founded and all that stuff, and then there's the Joe chapter before that. So it was fun. I mean, I like boxing. I'm no expert at it, but I had to look up in the fights. I had to make sure that was that really a right that's knocking them down. And you know what I mean?
Not flip photo.
Yeah, or I'd read the account, in the paper, because anybody knows you can't just make up, you knocked him down with it, and so I wanted to be accurate. This is that one left before that one, even that, because Joe's world famous. You're not going to get away. Some guy, I'm not reading this book. That's like, the boxing people would just go, if he's wrong there, what's he going to be?
Yeah.
You try to be as accurate as you can. That's what I'm saying.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Because I get through about 3 pages and of something, I go well, if they're already that wrong and that many times, I don't know, Now,
I got one for you.
Yeah. Well, I'm not saying that I'm infallible. I'm just saying that you can tell people that didn't do their work. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's all. And then he didn't remember. So, like I said, I would go back and read the fight account. I'd make sure that it was on the right day.
Damn.
That's what I'm saying. That's what the laborious thing took 4 years. You know what I mean? It just, and he didn't write one sentence. It's all on tapes. And then I'd be driving along, and we'd be turning some street in Detroit around the corner. well, got to get that thing on. I'm trying to turn on or go home and write it down as fast as I could, because all of a sudden he'd see something that would remind me of something, and it was just too golden. I'm like, wow, what's that, man? Yeah. Well, anyway, on it goes. And a friend of his left his memories of Hastings Street, and I have it. He grew up there as a kid and used to sneak out at night. So I've got all that from a guy that's like probably his age now, about sneaking out and going up and down the street, what it was like, at night. Yeah, it was really trippy. And so, he said there was a prostitute that sat on a corner who was about 250 pounds. Sat there when he was a kid, and he said he went by later on, and there she was as an old lady still sitting on that same crate on the corner.
Oh, damn.
That's what Hastings Street was, character street. That's what I'm saying. Well, like, we got to remember to back up a minute. It was it was a rough street, and during the day people did their shopping before it was desegregation came, and then they would get the heck out of there. And nighttime came, and then the women came, the streetwalkers came.
When was 75 built?
It was begun, and they started it in 59, but it took block and block and block time to do it. But things were already moving out of here. I was looking at my list in 57 and 58 in the city directory, and you could look at the vacants. I was doing a perusing, like, this is still here, vacant. It was already being sold. A lot of the owners were of the businesses didn't live there anymore, so they were getting the hell out of there. So it didn't disappear overnight, but then again, Sunnie wanted to get close to John R, because that's where the next phase was moving. That Flame, and there's several John R places. Which they were kind of there's a hotel there, and they were trying to speculate that would be the next place as to move on, and 12th Street was the next was phasing out that.
I think Barry Gordy was a photographer at the Flame.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Yeah, I think that's in his memoir, but
I think it was his sister.
His sister.
The sisters, but he used to hang out there, and
Right.
that really where he got to know Jackie Wilson. And
yeah, that's all that stuff. Yeah, so it's you can edit what you want out of this, but we know we're drifting around, but it's all related, I think, to Michigan. I'm trying to.
No, we thank you for your ability to put details to everything, and I think when you said to us earlier about getting handed your own writing back as what things should be, that's pretty good detail of how deep someone goes.
You don't have to put that in there. I just put it because I thought it was
That's
funny
fantastic.
that I got Paul Chambers as the example.
Yeah.
I went like, good for us. You know what
That's fantastic.
It is. It's like TCU go, man.
Yeah, there
you
you
know, because it's like there's a really good article in Downbeat that was talking about the new talent coming from Detroit, and PC's playing. So we were getting that. We were getting that kind of thing going. And how many of the players were from here? And Kenny Burrell's super cool, and all those guys. So I'm happy to be. Just
You got another music book in you?
I don't know.
well, how
No,
about
but I was talking about the all the people I had met.
Yeah, no, but I'm just asking you. Do you got another music book in you?
That one.
What's the future got for you, man?
Well, that's the odds and ends. Called my musical back pages are all just stories of stories, and the stories I read, and all the things I put together, like the stories that were told to me that are all gone now. I bet you a couple of people are dead about the chessmate, and then just like what I filled in about what Joni said and what Neil said, and then where it is, and
the bits and pieces.
I don't want to give away the Howlin' Wolf one I have.
Not yet.
It's so good that my professor friend went there with all his OU students, and there's a Howlin' Wolf one at the chessmate that's just golden good. So, and then there's just that comes in pieces and parts in time, and it's all in my own. What do you do with it? Ultimately, it's something that's like a journal, but throughout life kind of thing. But I think you just have to pick out the most interesting things you can have, and it's still not ending, because I get people all the time telling me, like, I was at something. Really, that guy played there? I didn't know that. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. So
You have a website, John? Where can people contact you?
I have Facebook. You go on Facebook. I have. If they want to read stuff, I've got examples of free articles that you can read on 7artsbooks.com, and it's all one word, 7artsbooks. You go into it, and there's one proud one I like. It's all about the lyrical side of Jimi Hendrix and how Dylan and all those people influenced him, and all the psychedelia and all the comic books and all the weird stuff. And that one's different, you know. I mean, it's like I talked about like his songwriting, not so much the guitar stuff, because like even Gil Evans said when he wanted to do those orchestrated records and the big band stuff, Hendrix, he says, we forgot he wrote some really good songs. And he's right, you know what I mean? The Little Wing's cool, and When Christ Mary, and the Dylan influence, and all that other stuff, the blender that went on, you know, and all the Dylan stuff I didn't even realize he covered. You know, I went back in time and he had a release of "Don't Let Me Crawl Out Your Window." It's like, what's that tune? It was on the radio for a minute, but it's a Dylan tune, you know. And then like what? And then so it was like him talking about blues and how he liked, you know, all the blues lyrics. So the blender that went on. So that I'm saying is I didn't publish it anywhere. It's just on there for, what do you do with it? I don't know. You give it to Metro Times and they don't know what to do with it. Why? It should be in. Why don't we have a cultural magazine around here? I have no idea. You know what I mean?
Kind of like the Atlantic or something where people can contribute to it and put in something.
Yeah, even electronically now. Yeah. Come on. And so I was happy with my Mingus one I did for contemporary musicians, for, you know, contemporary black biography. I always gave them longer than I should, so they allow you 200 more words if it was. So I was happy with my Mingus and Hendrix is on there talking about music, you know, and other offerings are just on there if you go in there as to peruse. So that was one way. It's a book. It's my online bookstore, but it offers stuff that you can go on and read. So it maybe entice you to maybe buy something.
JohnCohassey.com. Is there anything like that or no?
No, it's just, you know, it's 7artsbooks.com.
7artsbooks. That's it. Okay.
.com. And
you're on Facebook.
I'm on Facebook.
John Cohassey, thank you so much, man.
All right. Yeah.
It's been a pleasure, man. Thank you.
Going down.
The MMHP is hosted on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and our own Libsyn podcast site. You can also search MMHP989 on Facebook for up-to-the-minute information, as well as both Dr. J and Sir Fred's album picks of the week, posted every weekend. You can connect with Scott on the web at scottbakermusic.com, Dr. J at michiganrockandrolllegends.com, Sir Fred at fredrife.com, brought to you by Michigan Rock and Roll Legends, located both inside the Bay County Historical Museum on Washington Avenue, as well as Scotty's Sandbar on Evergreen Drive at the Bay City Middle Grounds.
On behalf of the hosts, Gary, Dr. J. Johnson, Sir Fred Rife, archivist and videographer Mike Beatty, and myself, this podcast wouldn't be here without Studio 163's Alan Garcia, the voice of MMHP, Mr. Eddie Switek, all of our guests, and you, the listeners.
You've been listening to the MMHP and the 989. From all of us at the podcast, we want to thank you for tuning in.
Late Neil Young came to the coffee. Remember the Chessmate? You went there, didn't you?
To where?
Chessmate in Detroit.
Yeah, we played there.
Yeah. Well, Neil Young tried out there and didn't make the audition.
Was that when he was with Rick James?
No, before that. That's
That's
when Joni and Chuck were a house band group, and they said, "Come on," and he wandered around and came down to Detroit. And I think he said at White Castle, I forget the song he wrote. It was like "I'm a Child" or one of those early ones. He wrote it at the White Castle.
No,
right near.
Really.
Yeah. I went through every day that I could find because he was in it all the time. So when I went through it, I made all these notes that I'd find on Von Battle. So Von Battle was like, his store served as like, a lot of times they use it as like, he would report what was selling best in Detroit from his store, because he was the big black record store at the time. So like in this one it's funny how today it's around 48, 49, 50 is this crowning period with Cooker. It makes the charts in 49 but records it in 48. Joe Von Battle here in September 18th in the Chronicles says, "Blues outsells everything 10-1." And Joe has you know, the recordings of C.L. Franklin and religious music, but he loves blues the best. So his hearts are, the average record buyer looks for a tune with, quote, feeling, and more feeling in a record with lyrics, you know, the more lyrics than any instrumental you can name. Blues tells a story. And then he says, at that time, the best-selling records at his store were by, his bestseller is Ivory Joe Hunter. The best women's singer Detroit out of his store was Dinah Washington in 1948.
Really?
Yeah, in 43, I remember one listed as that it was Nat King Cole, Straighten Up and Fly Right. So he had like the bellwether for what the taste was on that whole East Side area was his record store. So he'd be in the paper a lot. You know, they give him and they had pictures of the store a couple times in the paper. But
yeah, when you see the during the riots and all that, I think his store was saved, wasn't it?
Yeah, the Hastings Street one, I don't know, but it was more in the 12th Street one. Remember?
Oh, okay, right.
Yeah,
right.
He moved to 12th Street, and then during the riot, he had to stand out front because he was worried it was going to get burned down when he had moved there in these, you know, the 67 riot. But the 43 one, I don't know how he fared there, but I just found these little blurbs as you look up and down the street. Now, Fred and I were talking about, we both talked to Eddie Burns at length. Now, Eddie's right because everybody says, "Oh, Hastings Street and blues." And well, there were blues, but it was like they were in what they called at that time corner bars or taverns, and it wasn't a blues bar. So it was like they might have washboard, you know, Willie 1 week or something in a weekend, and that was it. You know what I mean? But they didn't have a bar. The Jump Blues was that we were talking about had solid places at the sports reads and stuff. They had a floor show, Cable Walker. Big Joe Turner once in a while, but
that was just like the tour stop.
Yeah, and that was a bar that had music all the time.
Yeah.
But the blues guys just like played wherever they could.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So Brown's Bar was a regular one for Mayfield, and that was on Hastings Street, and that's where William Lee talks about that later because he was there for a bit. So it was just a blues bar had a piano. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was like, but Fred and I were saying, it's not like you walked up and down the street and heard blues coming out it was not a regular fare. You could find it at house parties. You could find it at the streets that ran, you know, east and west, all over the neighborhoods and that. But Hastings Street was more like, you know, small show clubs. And we'll talk about Hastings Street. I mean, it's like at night it was female sex workers dying.
John, when you wrote about Kerouac in Detroit, I had no idea that he'd spent any time in Detroit until I looked up some that list. But that's not really a book. That's more like a little pamphlet, or
well, because it wasn't enough. I went through everything that he wrote and the scrolls too, and every little essay that he wrote and letter, and I could only come up with this long. It's this long, but I did it very condensed, you know, and I had to read the whole scroll version of it and everything else, and then all the war industry. All he did is read, you know, and then come home, and then he found a bar that's in Grosse Pointe Park. It's on Kercheval. It's called the Rustic Cabins. It's still there.
Wow.
It still has like the silly front that looks like it's in Mackinac City. And there's Moosehead on the wall, and everybody's like, Jack Kerouac, and they put it on the wall. Jack Carter's name. I go, he didn't carve his name in there. Jack wouldn't do such a thing. Somebody knows he was here. That he didn't carve his name. Nobody even knew who he was. He was out of work, and he's sitting there brooding, and he dropped, you know, the military, and all the guys in there, the old owner said, they looked at him because he's, you know, able, good-looking guy. They're all going like, why aren't you in the service? And he got real depressed and drank in there all the time and said, I got to get the hell out of here. And he kept on using the phone to call Ginsberg and all. He wanted to get back to New York. But he was unknown. That's another thing. He's not published yet, so who the hell knows who he is?
Sure.
Yeah.
So he got the hell out of there and left her. But then there's stories in here, they come back twice, and he brings Crazy Cassidy with him to stay the weekend. And he's telling him, don't rob the house. And they hitchhike with duffel bags and walk to the house from the Detroit station. People go, "Who?" I go, "No, these are vagabonds, man. These were true road warriors. These guys were barely eating." I said, "This wasn't some romantic life. These guys were, they stole and shit." You know?
Yeah.
So anyway, it's in there, and I'll probably give you a copy, and that's the enticement to it. But we don't really need to talk about that. The music is what
Yeah.
More about the
Well,
music.
it's all good.
Well, no,
certainly
the
is. It's
culture,
fascinating.
the Detroit music and any Michigan music you want to mention, Yusef Lateef, jazz, whatever,
Yeah, I
it's all
love it
good.
Oh no, I love
But
it all.
but the culture is also in the author culture. That's part of our show. So
Yeah, and that's true too. And you know what I would say too, just trying to talk to it. Me doing the thesis and doing Sonny's book, I straightened out kind of like what it is. To start out is like I get people from New York and LA. They call me all the time. Oh, you're the one that wrote that. That's great. We're gonna do a documentary. We're gonna write a book. I go, where are the pictures? There aren't any. You already saw them. That's it. That's all there is. And then they say to me, well, yeah, I'm gonna name it like our thing's from LA. The guy's like, it's gonna be Black Bottom and whatever. And I said, but it's gonna have music. He goes, yeah. I go, there's no music in Black Bottom. Well, I already told my publisher, and then I'm halfway through the interview. I'll get to this, and within it is that I said, oh, I see. Hastings Street has been used so many times, you have to use the cool title of Black Bottom. I said, there is no music there. It's a neighborhood. But he goes, I go, If you told a New Yorker, if you renamed the borough, or if you called the Bronx something else, they would want to wring your neck.
Yeah.
You come to Detroit and you mislabel our thing, black people won't like it. I know a political consultant I'm writing right now, it's a powerful guy. He reads that, he's probably gonna make big commentary about how people come here and pilfer, especially his culture.
that's a great way to put it. They pilfer Detroit.
No, they come by, they drive-bys, and they come here because Detroit's supposed to be tough and cool and all this. And, and the guy goes, well, gee, don't get mad. Well, I am, because you read my stuff, and I took years to seriously work this out, and Sunnie Wilson knew the difference. All my old black friends know the difference. You come in and rename it because it's convenient for you to make money. And the guy didn't like it. So that's all you get from me. I said, well, you'll be hearing me from me again. I go, because he went out Starbucks. No, you won't. I just didn't and the guy's just a hustler. You know what I mean? And I get tired of it. But that's the negative point. So
We were in Finland one time, and Lazy Lester was so loaded that I had to go to the radio station and do instead of him.
Test.
And so I had to tell his story.
oh no.
And then I had to say, hi, this is Fred Reif, manager of Lazy Lester, and when I'm in Helsinki, I listen to whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, this is stupid.
We need that on-air check for our podcast.
Oh, yeah.